Think about one that's important to you. And just keep that mindful throughout our time here today, because there will be, a few opportunities for you to work and collaborate with others in this meeting today. So here's our agenda. We're going to reflect and review the branding activity, which I found for the people who were able to submit it, and I was able to give some feedback to you. I found that really the insights that you were having really quite fascinating about that. We're going to collectively look at your sourcing data. I was able to this morning, for everybody who had submitted it, combine the data so that we can kind of see what do we see as trends and what might be some of the implications for those in terms of sourcing. And then we're really going to dive into interview questions. And this is when we really go back to the standards. We go back to the educator profile or the candidate profile that we've created. I took all the work that you've done on the candidate profile and the feedback from last week, and now I kind of have a draft that brings it all together as a hopefully a document that's useful to you. Sorry, my dog just snuggled around my leg and I was like, what's going on? He doesn't usually do that. And then we're going to be able to move into designing some interview questions. And again, we're going to do that where we're going to stay with the standard that we've been working on. And there's going to be a document so that what the work that you do then becomes a resource for everybody else. Because that's one of the things that I really want you to be able to walk away with is processes that you could either turn around and do in your own environment, or things that you're like, we don't have these things in our environment. We could just start using these as guides. So processes and products is really kind of my goal in a lot of what we're doing, that you have some really good deliverables that you might be able to use, or if you can't use them because you've got your own standards, you've got some processes that you might be able to use to do some alignment work around these things. And then it's kind of looking at next week and where we're going next week, which is sadly our last week. You guys are going to be the lucky ones. I've already requested that if I teach this course in the future, that it's longer. I want more Saturdays with people than I'm getting. So you guys are going to get off easy in comparison to who maybe takes this course in the future. All right, so here's our essential questions that we're going to kind of noodle through today and just be mindful of. I'll just let you take a look at those really quickly. And I don't know if you've noticed this, that every time I change these things on the inside, but I always keep this one the same. The idea is to really transform hiring. We're digging into different topics and different things to think about and think through. But the idea is, how do we really kind of transform some of our processes for hiring? So our first breakout room is going to be, what's your brand? And so you're going to have an opportunity to select the conversation that best fits you. If you end up alone in that space, we will go to you and we will help you move somewhere else, because we do want you to have people to talk to. But if you have your branding information with you, you want to probably have that to refer to for the conversations that you're going to have. So what you're going to do is you're going to select the room that in your process of the branding activity, you identified your school as having a pretty clear brand for recruiting talent. Remember, this is recruiting talent. And I think the thing that was very interesting to me in reading a lot of the submissions is there is a clear understanding of the school brand, but that always isn't transferred into the recruiting process. I think someone in the submission said, like, we have no brand, like when it comes to recruiting. It was you. Oh, yeah. But you're not alone. But so that's kind of the point of that branding exercise, is we do spend a lot of time in our schools thinking about, who are we? Who do we serve? How do we serve them? What's our identity? But then how are we leveraging those same things to go and try and find the teachers who best fit our brand, our identity, and our purpose. And so that's really what this activity was about. So if you feel like you had a clear brand, you're going to go to room 1. You have a brand, but you didn't feel like it was strong, but like you could see elements of it there. So kind of an in-betweener. If you have no brand, you're like, we really don't really think about branding and selling ourselves to candidates. You can go to the no brand room. If you were able to do part of the activity, but not all of it, and you have a sense of where you're at, go ahead and go to room 4. If you weren't able to do the activity, perhaps it was your break, and you weren't able to get to this, then go to room 5. All right. So Lissa's going to pop in if she hasn't already. She's always ahead of me anyway. The Miro link, because we're going to, again, just for each session, use Miro to kind of capture our thinking. So here on this top one, let me zoom in a little bit. I've given each group a set of questions to sort of noodle through and capture like some of your big takeaways from your conversation here under that. So you have different questions depending on where you are to help you think through this branding activity. I love it when I see you guys all popping up on the Miro link. All right. So here are the questions. Lissa's not going to pop them into, sorry, done. Lissa's not going to pop them into the chat because they're already in the Miro board. But what I want you to do is choose the place that best suits the conversation of to where you feel like your school is or where you were at in this branding activity. Okay. Are there any questions about that? Anything that I could answer before you go off? You're going to choose your room. And then you're going to, with your team, really look through those questions on the Miro and start having those conversations and then capture some of your big takeaways. Let's make sure that each group gets 2 to 3 individual Post-its on takeaways. All right. Because one of the things that was quite interesting about the feedback last week is people were saying they like seeing what other people are thinking in the group. And by having it on the Miro and it's so public, you can kind of get an insight into the conversations that happen somewhere else. So please make sure you put in those 2 to 3 Post-its. Questions? All right, go ahead and join your room. If you have a hard time getting somewhere, Lissa and I are here to help. We'll watch the numbers to make sure that you are not alone or there's too many of you. Okay? Thanks, Lissa. Wait for the rest of us. All right, I'm gonna kind of show the Miro board. Now I think we're all here, getting here. I'm going to show the Miro board. And Emily, I'm going to ask if you can kind of summarize some of the conversations in your group that identified, like you felt like you had a pretty strong brand. And I'm curious as to what were some of the things that you felt like that was helping from the conversations that you were having. Like why do you feel like your schools had a strong brand? What kind of work or thinking kind of attributed to that assessment based on the conversations in your group?
Yeah, I think, there were a lot of things in place in terms of having employment pieces on the website or on LinkedIn and search and things like that. But where I think it really stood out was the work that is done on retention, on onboarding, the transition into the school, because those things are what is really memorable for people, and people will talk about once they've been at the school. It really contributes to school culture. So things like the accreditations that people had really stood out as well as being important, and making sure things like what kind of package do you have coming in, and making sure that that's really competitive with other places around you. So we were really tying like retention and transition and onboarding to having a stronger brand, which actually then lowers your need to do as much recruitment. kind of word of mouth will help a lot with that as well.
Right. People know whether that school might be a fit for them. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, this is the place where I would say the things like you've worked on, like the candidate profile, this is where these belong. Like as part of that branding and recruitment process as well. Like this is who we want to see at this school in a way that's like bespoke to your school with your language, your values, and your goals. Thank you, Emily, for sharing that. I want to move over to the ones that they feel like we have a brand, but it's not so strong. Rain, were you in that group? I'm sorry, I might be saying your name wrong. Ronin?
Group.
I'm
Yes, I'm on the group.
Okay, would you mind being the spokesperson for your group about what were some of your conversations like? What were some of the big takeaways in connecting with each other on this?
Just give me a second, please. 1 second.
No problem. Sorry, I'm putting people on the spot.
Can someone take my spot for now? Because
Yes, so you were the person that I could remember that was in there.
I'm really sorry.
That's
Just
okay.
give me
Who
1 minute.
else was in that group? I just remembered. Somebody else, can you unmute for me? Lisa, were you in that group?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
was trying to find my mute button. Okay, so
Thank you, Lisa.
we had similar kind of experiences or conclusions that our brands were very strong visually. They were very strong in terms of being student and parent facing, but that didn't necessarily translate into how the branding for recruiting new faculty. So one of the uh, observations was we've got this amazing branding when we go into job fairs, and it's only lives there. It only lives in that space. So having those marketing materials and kind of that presence that we have at job fairs, how can we translate that into our online presence to make it more appealing to potential candidates? And then one of the areas of growth was also really making it clear about not only the school's values in the branding, but also using that to level set with potential candidates, making sure that they know what they're signing up for. So it's a good fit and you have long-term retention.
Lisa, one of the things that you said made me think about the sourcing data, that one of the things about the sourcing of the data is you're talking about having really strong branding for face-to-face recruiting and the degree to which that's on decline, as well. So here's this space that's really strong, but that's actually not reaching that many people. Just kind of an interesting observation there. All right. And then the last group, Flynn, would you mind being our spokesperson on this group? Here, I'll make these a little bit bigger.
Okay, I mean, we were the group who hadn't, for a variety of reasons, completed the task, but we had some good discussions about, how clear the branding was. I think may not necessarily have been a factor in non-completion of the task, but it was a common factor amongst the group that we felt that our branding wasn't particularly clear. Some people it was, completely absent. Other people had some sense of it. We talked about, the website and presence or absence of clear branding there. We had some good discussions about just the kind of involvement that our boards have in the process there. It was good to hear from people, sharing, how the board. I think the conversation came from really, the different stakeholder perceptions and how, we have different views of it, but we just shared how our board plays various roles in kind of renewal and then hiring kind of processes there. Some good discussions, but it's probably slightly different to some of the other groups given where we were at with this task.
I'm wondering how many of you, when you did the looking at your competitors, did you see some of your competitors focusing more on that like recruitment branding than you were yourself? Like give a thumbs up if you really saw some competitors doing some good things. Or is this, oh, sorry, celebrate. Is this one of those things where it's maybe kind of a lot of people are kind of in the middle of it? So like thumbs up, you saw some competitors doing some good things. Okay, but not a lot of thumbs up actually. So that's interesting as well. All right, thank you for that sort of debrief and looking at each other's work. I appreciate that because we're going to move on to, and I've kind of referenced it a few times because I think it does somewhat relate to all of this is so interconnected. I think the sourcing, the planning, the marketing, and there's kind of connections through all of these. And I know in putting this course together, I think one of my takeaways has been just the importance of data. And that when I reflect on some of the recruiting processes and systems I've been a part of, there hasn't been a strong presence or use of data. And I see the sourcing as, really relating to forecasting, as well. Like, where are we going to go find talent? Where are we finding who? Is it really good, our sourcing, that we're finding it all ourselves? I think all of these things have to go into that idea of like, how do we be intentional, use data, and plan for the work that we're doing. So we're going to dive into the data that was submitted. And so what I did, and Liz is going to pop it into the chat, is from your Padlet, I downloaded all of the data, and then with my little friend ChatGPT, because I have a recruiting bot that I can load all of these things into, it helped me compile all of that data. So let me grab it really quickly. Lisa, did you already drop it in? And I'll just click on that. So the Padlet is where you gave me all the data, and then here's where I compiled all the data. So we had 10 submissions by the time I did this morning, my time. And so what I'd like you to do is look at what collectively was said and what was used, and a pretty simple data protocol. What do we see? What does it mean? And then really what we're going to focus on the Miro board are, when you scroll down here a little bit farther, those are the sourcing data, talent. Like, what are the implications? What are opportunities that you see that maybe others are using that you're not? And what's some new thinking for you? We're going to put you in groups of three or four. They're already predetermined who the groups are. So you're going to automatically be put into a room. Now, when we had the data submitted, we had two funny little animals, the shy rhino and the careful ferret. So we're not entirely sure who those are. So you won't be assigned, and you'll be with us, and then we'll put you in the right place. So don't worry about it. Hopefully you can remember if you were the shy rhino or the careful ferret, but either way, you go into the same group. So what you're going to do now is you're going to select your group, and you're going to engage in this really simple data dialogue. And really, it's about what are the implications, where are the opportunities, where's the new thinking. We're only going to take about 10 to 12 minutes for this, but I did want you guys to see those trends, because what's an experience in one school is not necessarily the experience in the other schools. So when we look more collectively, what do we see about what these schools in general are doing, and what can you learn from that? All right. Any questions or clarifications before Lissa opens the breakout rooms? Okay, the data is in the chat. And also, if you want to go back and reference the Padlet where people uploaded their data, that is also in the chat. Okay. All right, go ahead and go to your assigned room. We'll stay around and we'll help people get where they need to go, if you're the shy rhino or the careful ferret. These submissions that you get your course credit from it. So just make sure you get to it in the next couple of weeks if you didn't get to it. And on this one in particular, I will, as I get the rest of the submissions, I will go in and I will redo the data so that you have maybe data from 20 people instead of data from 10 people, because I do think the trends and some of the observations that I were seeing that we were talking about were kind of interesting in the Miro. And so it'd be nice to see if that data stays consistent as more data comes in. This one here, implications, schools are still investing a lot of money in attending job fairs. But like, what are you getting out of it? I know that I've been at job fairs where we've walked away with like one teacher, and there were maybe 3 or 4 of us there. This was when I was recruiting in China, which was a tougher place to recruit for. Some of you were talking about also the conversations that you listened to with Jenny Whitaker from IS Beijing and Ika Muzamal from ISKL, and some of the things that they were doing about like pipelines and sourcing talent. So I can see some things here as well in terms of opportunities or new thinking. Anything anybody want to add to this? Something that really kind of popped out to them? I'll take 2 contributions on this, like a reflection that's for the good of the group. And I have, remember, good wait time. Brian, you're unmuted. Does that mean you have something to share?
No, I didn't realize I was unmuted.
Oh, well, go ahead and take advantage of the unmute then, Brian. What's an observation or a takeaway from the conversation that you've had?
Yeah, our conversation ranged quite a bit. Like we had talked about, so far, like our recruiting needs are still being met. And, even though there have been, ongoing challenges and things like that. We talked a lot about referrals in terms of trying to bring those in to our schools as an opportunity. And that was one of the main areas.
All right. Thank you, Brian. One other person like to share, please? Thanks, Amanda.
Hi, Stacey. Yeah, we chatted about lots of different things, but just I suppose hiring a person, fit for purpose. So in a secondary area, hiring a person that can actually teach the subject, rather than trying to fill a hole, I suppose. Yeah, so there was a bit of conversation about that. And we discussed online and going to fairs, and the online, I don't think that's sort of been working very well. Yeah.
But it seems like people are really hiring online, maybe not at an online fair.
Yes. Yeah.
But they're finding people through recruitment services, and that seemed like increasingly the predominant way to find people was using recruitment services and direct applications to your school increasingly.
Yeah. Whereas actually it was interesting, Nisha was saying that their school only does direct application. That's where is that right? Can you correct me if I'm wrong, please, Nisha? Yeah.
Direct application, word of mouth, and now LinkedIn. We don't go to any fairs, never had. Yeah, it's not a budget thing. It's just they kind of use the brand and reputation, and that's it.
And that's, again, it goes back to that question about like branding and how are you pushing out your brand, your identity in the recruiting space, not just in the parent space, right? We know a lot of our schools work really hard in the parent space, but like, what does that look like to apply some of that into the recruiting space? Any other last minute comments, or I will go back to the next step. I'm going to cancel out of this. All right. I really wanted to spend a significant amount of time today on developing interview questions. So that's really where we're going to move towards next, is kind of bringing a lot of these resources that we've been using and leaning on. Sorry, I went backwards. Okay. All right. So this is sort of connecting the dots through the lens of interviews and bringing some of the conversations and work that you've been doing together to help support crafting the interview questions so that you get the kind of information that you want to know about candidates. So we've really ground ourselves in standards. So really this is the kind of the triad that I see, that we start with the standards that really essentially articulates the core skills. Then the next step that we took was a candidate profile, leveraging the core skills, and then also talking about what are the dispositions that we need to see. These were the functional and foundational pieces that we worked on in the candidate profile, which I'm just, because those are pretty technical terms, like I'm just now going to kind of refer to them as core skills and dispositions that we need. So the candidate profile like unpacks the standards and makes it a little bit more accessible and adds maybe some of the more less tangible elements that we're looking for in our candidates. And then the next step is taking those two foundational pieces and saying, how do we ask questions that get us to understanding the core skills and dispositions of this candidate? So really, this is a standards-based process because you've started with the standards, you've translated the standards in a candidate profile, and now you're going to design the questions that help you gather the information that helps you assess talent. So we've already gone back to the candidate profile. So these are the standards that we started with, and this is going to be very small, the next slide. I apologize, but you do have it in a comprehensive document that you can see really easily. So we took those standards and then you all worked individually on creating the candidate profile. So these here are your statements. This one is split in two. It starts here, stability and transition, to over here. These are the statements that you crafted and created with some alignment work, with some looking at gaps and redundancies as well to make sure that we're not saying the same thing over and over again in each one of these in terms of dispositions. They get expressed differently. And so what we're going to work on now is taking those two ingredients, those core documents, and moving towards the interview questions. So in the document that Lissa's going to share with you, oh, and actually, sorry, I think we've got these in a document. I forgot to put this in. These are also in your resources, your PTC resource booklet. I think if somebody can shout out the numbers, because I have it on a different page. I meant to put that in there, sorry. It's multiple pages.
Starts at 31.
31, thank you. If you want to look at it in hard copy, you have it in hard copy, and Lissa has just posted all the digital links as well to these, and they're also going to be in the document, so you don't have to worry about getting them all right now. They're going to be in the document that we're going to share with you. So one of the other things that you used were the cultural competence scorecards. And so what I want you to do is using the candidate profile, the standards of practice interview resource. Now, the standards of practice interview resource is something that I have created because TIE is a recruitment portal as well. Like we have recruiting services. So one of the things that we create are tools for the people who are recruiting with TIE. And one of those is like interview question banks. To help schools that are doing the interview process, we provide some resources to them. So I'm providing that resource to you. Now, what's different here is those are based just on the standards. And now we have created a candidate profile. There's kind of like an intervening document. So there's going to be some similarities and there's going to be some differences, but I still wanted you to have the resource. And then I wanted you to reference the cultural competence scorecards that you used last week as well, to be mindful of those, because we have to think about bias in our interview process and in our interview questions. So these are the three core tools you're going to use in this process. So I also went on, and Lissa will link in the chat, the document where we're going to work. But I also wanted to provide some guidelines for how do we get started with writing these questions. I know when I would do this with my team, because I always did team hiring, we'd sit down and we weren't using standards, we weren't doing any of those things, but we'd be like, okay, we want to know about their philosophy. We want to know about collaboration. Like, we were in many ways getting to the concepts and the standards, but we didn't have anything to define what we might be asking about. And then we would draft questions. And that's the way that we would go. And I think this is a lot tighter of a process in terms of guiding us, in terms of thinking about how do we get to them giving evidence? How do we not ask questions that are about hypothesis? Things like that. Like, we want to say, like, what have you done? I like this, the CARE framework: context, action, impact, reflection. This is what you're looking for, is in this context, what action did you take? What was the impact? And what did you learn from that? It's a simple framework to follow. Again, ask for the receipts. That's about evidence. Design questions that show thinking, just not doing. What are you looking for? Think about the look fors in advance. How do you plan intentional follow-ups? And then how do we keep equity and inclusion central? And then we're going to actually go through this process today, and then you're going to have an opportunity to sort of test and refine your questions with each other. Now, in the document that Lissa has shared with you, it lists these, and then there's even more explanation in there for you with a checklist to help you and support you to explain these so that you can use this for the next really kind of 20, 30 minutes. We're going to be working on this. So in breakout room 3, you're going to be going back to the team that you've been working with on the standard that you have been working with. You're the one who already defined that standard. You're the one who identified the skills and the dispositions. There might be some changes, but yours was the key ingredients that went into creating the draft. So the task is using those resources, and on the Google Doc, create 3 to 4 questions for that standard. You want to have the question, possible follow-ups, look fors, and I love this idea of red flags. If you heard this or you saw this, what would that be like? Oh, that's an alarm bell going off for me. If they can never speak with specificity, right? They can never provide evidence. Like, those are the kind of red flags that you might be looking for. So I want to show you this document here. This is where everything is. The guidelines are here. The links to everything are in here that I've given you. This, with a little bit more explanation, is here for you. And then the work that you all did is now here with 4 research-based practices, the candidate profile, the core skills, the key attributes or dispositions are here. And then what you want to work on is 3 to 4 questions down here just for this one standard question, possible follow-ups. What would be a few look fors? What would be a few red flags? And you're going to go to the standard. And Lissa, remind me, did you put these rooms together already that just sends them there?
Yes.
Okay. So Lissa knows the standards that you've been working on. So she's going to send you back to those groups with that set of standards. And you're going to have at least 20 minutes to work on this, and I'll check in and give you more time, because this is kind of like where we are harnessing our collective thinking. And what I want you to walk away with is a resource that informs some of the questions that you might ask in your hiring process this year. If you've set some of these standards that are priorities, here's some resources for you to go to and some things to help you design. All right. Questions or clarifications on this process? Okay. And I'll be popping around, checking in, answering questions. Does everybody have links to everything that they need? Because there's a lot of different documents here for you.
Sorry, which document exactly are we editing?
This one here, the standards-based interview questions. Let me share it really quickly.
Yeah.
This one. I think this is the one that you probably, the other ones you may not have edit rights to. This one you do.
Okay.
Standards-based interview questions. This one here, on the design guidelines, this is the links to all the resources.
And this
Where do
link
you
was
add-
shared?
I don't have that doc
Yeah,
yet.
I don't see the standard-based interview questions. The other ones, where
I'll
was
pop it
it?
in, or Alyssa
Okay.
will pop it in.
Yeah, I'll find it. It must be the
Oh, I just
wrong.
got it, Alyssa. I just put it because I already had
Okay.
it up.
Perfect,
Okay.
perfect.
Thank you.
Nope, thank you for catching that. All right, we're going to send you off and be checking in. This is a really big culminating activity of pulling a lot of different things that we've been working on together in one place that you can have impact when you start having these interviews that you're going to have in the coming weeks. And if anybody here needs help getting somewhere, just let us know. Melissa, can you stop recording? Welcome back. There'll be more popping in. All right. So the next one, as always, we're going to finish right at the end. We're going to push it right up to the very end. Because now what we're going to do is we've mixed you so that you're not with any of the same people that you're with in the group, so that you can share and they can look at your questions. All right, now you all have access to everyone in the document. Most people were able to get at least a couple of questions in there, which is fantastic. That's a great starting resource for everyone. And so what I'd like you to do is, with your trio, there's only one group of 4. You're going to get about 5 minutes per person. Take a look at the questions. What feedback would you give? Are there any changes that you can make in the moment? Knowing that both of you are going to be sharing these with different people, that's okay. So we're going to take 15 minutes for this, actually maybe like 14 minutes for this. I'd like whoever has the longest hair in the trio to be the facilitator. Right. So today was a day about connecting some dots, really getting your hands on some resources. So some of the things that you kind of have available to you now are, you have a candidate profile draft against those standards that you can use, have interview questions aligned to those standards. And then I shared the TIE set of interview questions. It has some other stuff in it, like it has a rubric. And it's all still to the standards of practice. It has listen fors, not just look fors, but listen fors. So it has some other guiding things in there that we share with people who use TIE. So you really are walking away with today, connecting a lot of dots and a lot of resources in your hands to think about how might this be useful for you in your process this year or potentially in the future. So I just want to do a quick preview of the week and where you're going next. There's just a quick reflection on the teacher profile so that you can go back and kind of solidify your thinking on that. And then we're going to be moving into evidence and actually looking at teacher evidence, because one of the things that we really promote is, how do we have an evidence-based process? So you're going to get to look at some teacher evidence against standards to see, what does it look like to have evidence as part of the recruiting process. And then the last one, it's one near and dear to my heart because this is a place where I have messed up before, was on reference checks. All this hard work put into recruiting and questions and asking the right questions to kind of blow it in the last step, which is the reference check. So there's going to be some readings and some thinking about reference checks before kind of do the last asynchronous week. Remember, if you need to get in touch with me, you can email me. You can also book a Calendly link. I'm happy to have a chat if you're thinking through something and just want a thought partner. I'm happy to do that. And then I do want to remind you, you do have this document here to kind of track your thinking through all the phases of the framework and capture those look fors. And this is something that I will be looking at the end in terms of just completion and relevance of reflection. All right. Any questions? We are 1 minute late. Questions or clarifications?
Can you put your email in the chat, please, Stacey?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's pretty easy.
Ah, great. Thank
I'm
you.
nameless now. I'm just a role. I'm not a name. All right. If everybody can unmute, say goodbye. Wave.
Bye-bye.
I hope you
Bye. Bye.
have
Thank
vacation.
you.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Have a great
See
rest
you.
of your day.
Goodbye,
Thank
everyone.
Bye.
Have a great
Bye.
week
Bye.
ahead.
Yeah.
Bye.
you. Ciao, ciao.